Burp Suite Basics. The basics is done, and now we're gonna go into repeater, then intruder, other modules, and then extender. And then I'm not really sure if I'm gonna go into detailed length or just flash through these ones: vulnerability research, network security, because there are other things that I want to do when it comes to the learning here on TryHackMe, and also on other platforms. There are many other platforms that I want to look into and actually put my perspective over them, my experience as a penetration tester on top of them, so that I can provide you with some value. So it's not everything and anything that's TryHackMe, but what I do like about them is that they have a nice way to actually put practice and theory together. I think this is what actually encouraged me to start with these videos. Then another platform that's actually more focused on the practice rather than the learning is Attack Defense Labs, and I might go into that at some point, but for now I'm going in parallel with the stuff on TryHackMe and also going through the OWASP application security verification standard, which is really important to know of, or to be very intimate with if you're an application security tester. Notice, I'm not saying a penetration tester, because a penetration tester can be someone who's actually doing infrastructure testing. So penetration testing or penetration tester for web applications or pen testing web applications, because penetration tester is a very broad term, so you have to be specific, because there are those who focus on network, on infrastructure, on Active Directory, which is something that I want to go into at some point. And of course, there are those who are very heavy on web applications, which is the one that I identify with most, which is why I like to focus a lot of time on these videos that are devoted to Burp Suite. So Burp Suite repeater, let's see how lengthy this room is. So we've got like 9 tasks. Welcome to the Burp repeater room. Having covered the basics, this room will dive into the more powerful aspects of the framework. So let me just start the machine. And at the same time, I'd probably want to connect to their VPN if I need it, or I'll probably connect it if I need it. We will be covering how to use repeater, and also let me just make sure that we're good on recording here. We will be covering how to use the repeater to manipulate and arbitrarily resend capture requests, as well as looking at some of the niftier options available in this awesome tool. Thus, new private window in Firefox, thus Burp Suite, and also thus VPN, THM, connect. We're connected, so temporary project, use the defaults. Good to go. Finally, we will encounter a series of examples, including a real-world extra-mile exercise which we use to consolidate the more theoretical aspects of the room. If you have not used it before, you may wish to do so now. Answer: deploy the machine if you're not using it, and let's get started. So let's see if we can access that. Copy link, open, paste in Firefox. Good to go. Completed. What is repeater? Repeater allows us to craft and or relay intercepted requests to a target. So in order to have repeater, first you need to intercept traffic, or serve, or be seen as a proxy. So you are the proxy. In this case, we have the internet, thus Firefox. We have So we have us. Let's say that we are the ones that are requesting access to Bastion. When we use a web proxy such as Burp Suite, we are actually acting in the middle of or between Firefox here and the server that's here at THM Labs. So first, this entire thing is actually going to go through here, and then so this is the request goes through Firefox, which intercepts it or allows it to pass through because it populates in the history here. Because if I would intercept things, if the intercept would have been on, when I actually hit enter here, I would have intercepted. So let's actually do that. If I have intercept on and then I hit enter here, as you can see, I intercept the connection, I intercept the request, and I could modify it as we go. So say binary or whatever, and then once I modify it, I could just forward the request. So as you can see, it's hanging, it's waiting on my response in here. I could forward, and then as I forwarded, it completed. I can choose whether or not to intercept the response as well. And I'm not really sure if by default Burp intercepts client requests, intercepts server responses. So it doesn't seem to in the intercept, but in the history you can see the request response pairs, so to speak. So you see the request and the response, of course. Alright, now Burp Suite allows us to craft on relay and or relay intercepted requests. So let me turn the intercept off. In layman terms, it means we can take a request captured in the proxy, edit it, and send the same request repeatedly. So what I can actually do here to actually use the repeater is to right click on this one and then send to repeater. So of course now I can modify it and at my own leisure. So I get the request here, I can render it, see how it would actually look like in the browser. I just let it prettify, and I can modify here. I can change it into a post, for example, or so on and so on and so forth. The ability to edit and resend the same request multiple times makes repeater ideal for any kind of manual poking around at an endpoint. Now, Firefox in developer tools actually allows us to do that. So if you go into the network, we actually right click in here. We can look at this request. Let's actually make this bigger. We can look at the request, actually right click on it. Where was it? Right click. There was a way to actually modify the request. Resend request. We have the headers. We can see all the details of the request, of course. Let me actually try and see if I can open this. There was an option edit and resend. So not on here, edit and resend. This one doesn't have the edit and resend, so I'm not really sure why. But regardless, we can look at all of them So they do have, this was the feature that I was looking at, edit and resend. We can edit the request in here and actually send it. This option is not present by default in Chrome here, but you can use an extension. There are probably multiple extensions in the Chrome plugins, in the Chrome plugin store or extension store, that allow you to modify requests. The repeater interface can be split into 6 main sections. Repeater, let's see how they split it. At the very top of the left tab, we have a repeater of the requests, which is this one here. This is where we have our requests, and you can just rename them. For example, let's say THM. So if you actually save your project as a copy, which is a feature available in the professional edition only, you can just name your entire project will be saved, and you can name your requests whatever you want in here. Otherwise, they will actually be given random numbers, and if I close them, the numbers are gonna keep on moving forward. So the next one is gonna be 4. All right, we can just build a request from the bottom up as well. So each time we send a new request, it will appear up here. Directly underneath, we have the controls for the current request, which is that one here. So we have the controls. We can send the request. We can just go back into the previous request if we have multiple requests. The next one is going to be, so if I click on the down arrow, it actually shows me what the next request is. If I click on the down arrow here, it tells me what the previous request was, and I just can go back into it. So in this case, if I say get robots.txt, click on send, it says 404 not found. We can just go back to our previous request. It's saved, request response, go back into robots.txt requests. It's there, all right. Next, still on the left hand side, but taking up most of the window, we have the request and response view, which is this, of course. We edit the request, the response will show up. So pretty basic stuff. Above the request response section on the right hand side is a set of options allowing us to change the layout for the request. So this over here. We can look at them like that or like that, one on top of each other or individually, but I usually keep the default. I'm very used to that, and inspector for me is most of the times X'd, so to speak. At the right hand side, we have the inspector, which allows us to break requests apart and analyze and edit them in a slightly more intuitive way than with the raw editor. So inspector is probably going to be covered up in another video maybe. Finally, above the inspector, we have our target. Quite simply, this is the IP list. So target, we can just modify it. This is very useful when you're building a request from scratch, because you want to specify your target, the port, whether or not it uses HTTPS, and so on and so forth. All right. Don't worry if it doesn't make too much sense. It should be making too much. It should be making plenty of sense, because this is very intuitive. So let's see how we are with the time, and then maybe probably do the third task as well. 14 minutes. Okay, we know what the interface looks like now, but how do we use it? Whilst we can craft requests by hand, as I've told you, it would be much more common to simply capture requests and then send through the repeater. When a request is captured, we can send it to the repeater either by right-clicking, so as I've told you, we can just in the proxy right-click send to the repeater, or we can see the key binding here, Ctrl+R. Switching back to the repeater, we can see our request is now available, which is the exact request that's in here, like this one, of course. the target and inspector elements are now showing information. However, we do not have a response. I do, because I already clicked on the send. I could just, if I want to have a different alteration, or if I want to have an alteration of this request, I could just send the request itself to the repeater, and this one I could name this one THM2, for example. So in this case, we are at the same level as they are here, and if I click send, we can see the response. If we want to change anything about the request, we can simply type in the request window, as I've told you, and send the response. For example, changing the connection header to open rather than close. Where is it? So open. This, I don't think this is going to change anything. We can check the bytes, for example, 6802 bytes, 6807. Let's go back and send this one more time, 6802, and then if we go forward to the open one, 6807. There is a bit of change here. We can actually look into the comparer to see exactly what it changes. We can send the response to the comparer and send the next one to the comparer, but maybe we'll look at that in a future video. Let's just stick to the point. So in this case, yeah, this is probably the only difference, because in this case the connection is kept alive, while in the closed one, connection is closed. So in the open one, connection is kept alive. Alright, we could then also use the history buttons to the right, as I've told you, to go forwards and backwards in our modification history. So all good to go. So far, this room by Muirland Oracle is really good, really insightful for people who are just starting out. Capture a request in the proxy and send it to the repeater, which is what I did, and next we are actually going to go in the next these are actually going to be interesting, especially when we go the extra mile SQLite with the repeater. So stay tuned for that in future videos.